My name is Joe Ruffini. I'm founder and principal consultant for JPR and Associates, LLC in Colorado Springs. My involvement with counter-terror safety and security really goes back to my early days in the Army, starting in 1974 when I was serving in Mannheim, Germany, and the big terror threat over there was a German group called Baader-Meinhof. And then on exchange with the British Army again in Germany in the late 80s, the problem was the Irish Republican Army and the many attacks that they were perpetrating throughout Germany, Belgium, and the rest of Europe. So my interest and study of terror really goes back several decades. For anybody wanting to get into the homeland security defense or counter-terror field, it really depends what they want to do for a living, because the field is very, very vast, and it goes from watch centers and joint terror task force to some folks want to be intelligence analysts, some folks want to be TSA screeners at the airport. So it really depends where an individual's interest is, what they're qualified to do based upon experience and or education, and where the openings are. And right now, within the Department of Homeland Security, within federal and state law enforcement and intelligence, there are literally thousands of jobs available from coast to coast, and they range from jobs that require a high school diploma all the way up to jobs that probably require advanced degrees. There's a lot out there. People just have to look and decide what they want to do and what they're qualified to do. Homeland Security is literally tens of thousands of men and women working from the local level all the way up through the federal level. And some of the more common jobs that support Homeland Security, at your local area, naturally you have law enforcement. Every city and county normally has an emergency manager. Most of your big cities have police, fire, and EMS reps, emergency medical reps, that also serve some kind of state role. Every state has its own Department of Homeland Security, and there's various law enforcement and intelligence analyst positions in there. And then you go up to the federal level, where you have jobs with Department of Homeland Security, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, FBI, Federal Emergency Management Agency. So literally, it's a very, very wide spectrum with many, many, many different skill sets. An education is very, very important. Let me say continuing education is very important, because even with as much reading as folks that do counterterror and homeland security like myself do all the time, there's so much information out there, and the world is changing so quickly, as we witnessed this month in Egypt and Bahrain, in Tunisia, and now what's going on in Libya, that education is extremely important. And whether you do that formally with additional college courses or advanced degrees, or whether an individual does that on his or her own, the important thing is continuing education is absolutely vital if you're going to remain on the cutting edge and remain competitive in this field. In the homeland security and counter-terror business, a lot of times perception becomes reality, but I think for most Americans, their perception of homeland security and their only interface with it is when they fly on airplanes and they go through the TSA screening procedures. I really don't think most Americans understand how many tens of thousands of men and women from the local to the state to the federal level have to trade and share intelligence information, analysis, arrest reports on a day-to-day basis, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every day of the year, in order to thwart the many terrorist threats that that working together as a community they do every year. I don't think most Americans understand the actual level of effort and the many hundreds of thousands of man-hours that are put in by very dedicated men and women all over the country every hour. I think anybody who's interested in a homeland security career, I think there's a couple of traits or qualities that will help any man or woman survive in the trade. Number one, we have to understand that this is a very big country, and between all of the federal, state, and local agencies, the bureaucracy is huge. And within a bureaucracy, ideas and innovation have a hard time of working their way up and getting approved very, very quickly. So I think anybody that wants to go into a Homeland Security career, I think a thing you need to have is patience. You need to understand the bureaucracy. You need to figure a way, the best way to legally work through the bureaucracy. And I think the big thing is you can't get discouraged easily. A lot of times in this immediate information environment, good ideas, just like information, have a shelf life. And the disturbing thing when you try and work a good idea through the bureaucracy is many, many times by the time it gets through all the levels of approval and gets approved, it may be 30 or 60 or 90 days since the person had the original idea. And because things have changed in the world, it's no longer a viable plan. And that tends to get discouraging. So you have to have what I call stick-to-itness and an ability to keep your morale up and just keep plugging through. I think the only thing that really surprised me was when the Department of Homeland Security was created, and amidst all of the new terror threats and challenges that we had, we actually managed to stand up the largest bureaucracy since this country has done in the 1940s. And it was really surprising to me that we didn't take all that money and just put it into organizations that already existed that could protect this country. We already had an intelligence community. We already had border and customs. We already had alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. We had the FBI. I don't think we needed another bureaucracy to complicate matters. I think we just needed to put the money down where the rubber meets the road, hiring more people, better education, and the best technology. But I don't have any control over that, so you work with what you have. The first few months is always in any job OJT, on-the-job training. No matter how much you study up, the important thing is to get in there, keep your eyes and ears open, and say to the folks that you're working with from the start, look, I got a lot to learn. I want to learn a lot, and whatever you're willing to teach me, I'm willing to know. I think it's very important not to go in there with the I know it all attitude. Go in there with I want to learn, I want to absorb. My first couple of months, I want to be a sponge. Technology has impacted greatly in Homeland Security. I mean, since 9/11, we've come a long way in everything from body scanners that you now find in a lot of the airports to our ability to X-ray containers that come off of ships and scan these containers for nuclear, biological, chemical, or radiological threats. I mean, technology is advancing every day. That's the great thing about this country, and the great thing about the capitalist system is that money's on the table and men and women get creative, and they get creative quickly. I think where we always need to be cautious is we have to remember that as good as technology is, it's the gray matter up here that really has to put it all together. And I think all too often, whether it's fighting wars in Afghanistan and Iraq or applying technology to Homeland Security, I think people have a tendency to rely on the technology sometimes too much without putting the thought processes behind it. So again, it's important to remember technology is good. The brain housing group up here is better. So the future of Homeland Security really depends on several things. It depends on the advance of technology. It depends on federal, state, and local funding. And it also depends on the threats, because the asymmetric nature of the terrorist threat changes all the time. And I think what the future of Homeland Security needs to be is that we as a nation in the Homeland Security business need to be more proactive. We're very reactive. Something happens and we change our policies or our procedures or our technology or our techniques. I think it's time to get a step up on the enemy and be a little bit more proactive, predict where they're going to go, and be able to match one-on-one in real time our defenses versus their offensive capabilities. My advice to any aspiring student or man and woman that want to enter a Homeland Security career or go from a current career midlife to a different career is, if you're going to go into the Homeland Security business, go into it with the mindset that every man and woman in Homeland Security is important, and that at any one time in this asymmetric war against terrorists, one man or woman with the right analysis, the right thought, the right idea can put into motion a process that thwarts a plot and saves lives. So to anyone going in the Homeland Security business, if you're not going to be serious about it every day and take it seriously, then probably you ought to do something else, because this is a deadly serious game, and we need all the men and women in here that are really at the top of their game every day.